For the last 10 years, I've been cleaning this gas stovetop with just dish soap and warm water, and it hasn't been doing that great of a job for me. So I decided it was finally time to figure out what is the best cleaner for a gas stovetop with cast iron grates. And to do that, I'm going to be testing 3 of the most popular store-bought degreasers and stove cleaners that I see recommended online a lot. And to make this test more exciting and more obvious, I've let my stovetop get pretty gross over the last month. So let's get to it. My stove needs a big clean. So in each of the 3 sections, I'm going to be using just one of these cleaners. So I've got Crud Cutter Cleaner and Degreaser, Zep's Citrus Cleaner, and Easy Off's Cleaner and Degreaser. I'm going to be using all 3 of these on the cast iron grates, the bottom of the stove itself, the burner cap, and the burner. And I'm going to be going over which cleaning tools are safe and effective to use on each of these different types of parts so that you don't accidentally scratch the finish on your stove, but you still get a really great effective clean. As you can see here, there's a lot of baked on residue left behind on the enamel part of my stove. And the cast iron parts of my stove have been building up dark stains from grease, burnt on food. And you'll also see little silver specks on my grates that I think are from the pans rubbing against the top of that grate. But don't worry, by the end of this video, you'll see my stovetop looking like this, and it wasn't that complicated. Let's get started with testing Crud Cutter. I put all of the removable pieces of my stovetop in my sink and sprayed them down with Crud Cutter. Then I sprayed down that section of the stovetop itself and let that soak in for about 30 minutes to let it start breaking down all of that burnt on grease and residue that's left behind. For all 3 of the products that I tested, I sprayed the parts down and let it sit for 30 minutes before coming back and spraying it all down again. That way it was nice and saturated when I was ready to start scrubbing. Now, if your cast iron grates are pretty clean, you can probably get away with just using this with a non-scratch scrubbing pad like you see me using in this video. But since I have 10 to 12 years of built up grease and carbon residue baked onto these grates, I needed to go a little bit stronger this time. So I'm using a steel wool sponge. So it's got a little bit of steel wool in with the sponge, and you can really get into the different grooves and all of the different contours of your cast iron grates with this thing. Now you can use steel wool on your cast iron, but it will remove that protective oil that is on your cast iron that keeps it from rusting or getting really dull looking. So I will be reseasoning these after using that steel wool sponge. I did still have to do some scrubbing with this Crud Cutter, but it worked a lot better on these cast iron grates than anything else that I've tried in the past. So I'm really happy with this product so far. I used that steel wool on all of my cast iron parts. So my cast iron is not enamel coated. Some of you might have a black enamel coated cast iron. If it looks shiny and smooth, don't use that steel wool on it. It is probably enamel coated cast iron. That will scratch the surface. For my uncoated cast iron, the steel wool is fine. It's just going to remove the seasoning more than likely. I also decided to use that steel wool sponge on my burner itself. So I'm not sure what type of metal this is. It does have a really rough texture to it, just like the cast iron, but it is silver. So I'm not sure if it is coated in something. Because of that texture, when I'm using the steel wool on it, it is not scratching the surface. You don't see any scratches, but it is able to get into that texture and finally remove the stains that I've really struggled to remove for years. So I've tried a lot of different products, but because I wasn't using a scrubber that could get inside of that texture in the past, I was only using a non-scratch scrubbing pad, and it just didn't get deep enough into that texture to remove the brown baked on stains that I had on that silver burner. So I want you guys to be really careful when you're deciding whether or not you're going to use steel wool on different parts of your stovetop. If it's shiny and smooth at all, don't use steel wool. Just stick with a non-scratch scrubbing pad. But after using the steel wool on these burners, I have to say that these are the cleanest I've seen these look since I've bought this stove. You can see that enamel coated stovetop itself is looking really clean at this point too. So I used the non-scratch scrubbing pad on that with the Crud Cutter, and it did a really good job. I didn't have to do very much scrubbing, just a minimal scrubbing that you would expect for something like this. Here's a look at that section compared to the section in the middle that I haven't cleaned with anything at all yet. And as you can see, it's done a pretty good job. I wasn't able to scrub off all of the carbon buildup that you see on that cast iron, but I got it a lot better. After that, I tested Zep Heavy Duty Citrus Cleaner in the center of the stovetop. So I used the exact same scrubbing pad, the non-scratch scrubbing pad that you see there on the enamel surface, and I used the steel wool sponge on the cast iron parts of my stove. I also let that product sit for 30 minutes before I started scrubbing. And here's a look at the results I got with that product. So as you can see, it didn't get nearly as clean as it did with the Crud Cutter. So Already the citrus cleaner is failing next to the crud cutter. So I moved on to the easy off cleaner degreaser test. So again, I did the same amount of time, same cleaning tools, same amount of time scrubbing on all 3 of these sections. With the easy off cleaner and degreaser, it did do a lot better than that citrus cleaner did. But overall, I think the crud cutter did a little bit better job. So I would give the easy off cleaner degreaser like a grade B. And the crud cutter, I would give that a grade A. So if I was going to pick one, I would pick the crud cutter. But if I couldn't get my hands on the crud cutter, I would still use the easy off cleaner degreaser. It did a pretty good job considering how bad my stove was looking. I hope you enjoyed this test. If you have a product that you want to recommend for cleaning your stove, let me know in the comments. I do want to hear about it. And if you have any questions, as always, put them in the comments below. I do try to answer them whenever I get a chance. All right, thanks guys.